Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Birth to Me podcast. This is going to be women's journeys throughout pregnancy and birth. We will be discussing infertility, treatments, and different types of births such as C-sections or natural births. If that is something that might be a trigger to you, feel free to see the title at the beginning, and we will always list what it's about. So if that's something that you are uncomfortable with, feel free to exit and join us at another episode. I hope you're doing well today, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Sit back and enjoy this special story from one of our friends. I want to thank you for being on here with me today because you're super sweet and you're very informative. You're always my go-to. Like, if somebody asks me something and I don't know the answer, I'm like, let me text Brittney. So
I appreciate it.
Helpful. And I love how loving you are to mothers, no matter where they come from and who they are.
Yeah.
We all need that. And so I just want you to tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I've been married this year. We'll be going on 8 years. 2 kiddos, both are autistic. My son is 5, turning 6. Daughter is 3, turning 4. Like we were talking about, I do it all. So I'm a lactation consultant. When it comes to like my doula side of things, that's anywhere from fertility to bereavement, postpartum, all those things. And then like on the side, I do readings, tarot, oracle, stuff like that. And then I also do Reiki. So really big fan of Reiki. I've been trying to like bring it into my practice a little bit when it comes to the birth side of things. My last client, we did Reiki during her birth and it was just so awesome. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I mean, I'm also bipolar type 2, so neurodivergent over here. So I love to bring on families that are also neurodivergent because I feel like, I can kind of connect with them a little better.
Mm-hmm.
I try to create a safe space for anybody. But I do like taking on those clients who also have a spicy brain like me and be there for them because, there's separate struggles that come into that whenever, you have somebody who is neurodivergent, whether it's autistic, bipolar, just depression and anxiety. Those clients may have like struggles that regular people don't have, or neurotypical people may have. So I like to love on those families, especially.
I love that about you because so when I had mine, I always went in saying, hey, I just found out like last year that I might be on the spectrum and I might have ADHD, but I've not been diagnosed and I don't want to say those things. But yeah. I do things a little differently in my head for comfort. And so whenever you're birthing, if you have something that is a trigger for you or something that really bothers you, it's exacerbated times 10,000. You don't feel safe.
Yes.
And so having that doula support where somebody's like, this is not what they want. You're the voice for so many women, and that's awesome. And it's awesome that you see things from a different side because when we see providers who don't understand what anxiety even feels like or depression, or they just say, well, let's give you some Prozac. Well, I don't want to do that. I need to find the root cause, and I need somebody to work with me like I'm a human. And I love that about you because you love people and you understand the mental side of, hormone, pregnancy, birth, everything. So
I try to bring holistic stuff into it as well. I've had so many clients, like I'd say my last, or maybe not even my last, but like a majority of them have dealt with, high blood pressure, stuff like that. Mainly it's been high blood pressure. And it's only like for some of them, it's only when they're in the office, that white coat syndrome. But, the first thing they're talking about is, oh, we need to do induction. We need to do this. And not looking at the root cause, for one of my clients in particular, she's also my best friend. It was only when she was in the office. When she was at home, everything's normal. So, she just had some anxiety first coming into those appointments. And my first question to her was if it was, all the time or if it was just when she was there. And then I was like, okay, well, let's look into like these herbal remedies and stuff. And bring that up with your provider, because I'm not going to say like don't talk to them about it, because that's not my place. But that's something that I've noticed. It's a trend, especially in my area. They don't want to ask all the questions. They don't want to get down to the root cause. They just automatically like jump to induction. They don't talk about changing diet, nothing. So I like having like both perspectives there and saying, hey, maybe you should like, do your research about this or look into this herb and stuff. And I noticed like in particular, like with my best friend, once she started using like some herbs and stuff and like teas, before going into those appointments, her blood pressure was like coming down. It was amazing to see. Always a big fan of that.
That's awesome. And you work on the doula side, you're there with pregnancy, and you are there when mama like needs help with breastfeeding or has questions. Yeah. I know that's your passion, is the lactation too.
Yes. Well, I think lactation coupled with postpartum is really my favorite. Like, everybody that does birth, they love that oxytocin high, but I feel like I get a bigger oxytocin high during postpartum, because that's where a lot of people don't plan. So, being that person that can like bring that up to someone and be like, hey, like, maybe we should make a plan for postpartum, whether it's for like 2 weeks or whatever, because you never know what's going to happen in postpartum.
That's true.
I feel like a lot of families get stuck on like birth only, and that's all that's on their mind. And then when they run into issues postpartum, they're like, oh my God, what do I do? Who do I talk to?
I love that you said that, because I love postpartum. I love birth, but I want to be there in the nitty gritty where everybody's confused afterwards. Yeah. I love that. I love cleaning. I love being like, how can I serve you? Because you get home and you're like, wait a minute, this whole new person is here. You're like, that's intimidating a little bit. I'm in charge. And I did it 5 times. I have 5 people. I'm like, whoo, what's going on?
It doesn't matter how many you have. Every experience afterwards could be a complete 180 from the one before.
Yes.
I know, like with my first, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? But my second, it was easy. Even though I had a whole another kid, I was like, I feel great. I can do anything. But that's not always the case. So I really try to push postpartum to people really hard. Like, you just never know.
So tell me about, how were your births personally? Do you want to talk about those?
So my first, I did a lot of research, thought I knew like a lot of stuff. I looked into having a home birth before we even got pregnant, looked into, doulas and stuff. But not like hardcore, I was like, oh, if I'm educated, I'll be fine. So, we ended up not hiring a doula for my first child. Pretty low income and on Medicaid, so I couldn't do a home birth. I couldn't afford it. We would have had to take out loans and stuff, and that was just not something, that was going to be feasible for us. So I ended up sticking with, OB, hospital, that type of deal. And even though I thought I knew a lot, I really didn't. So I guess we'll start with my 39-week appointment with my son. I went in, and the OB, I'd only seen him. This was the second time I'd ever seen him. I had my very first appointment with him and never saw him again until this day. And he was like, okay, so, we're going to do a cervical exam today, as long as you're okay with that. I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'd kind of like to know where I'm at. Because, I'm a big planner. So to me, it wasn't no thing to have a cervical check. He gets in there, he's doing his stuff. And then he's like, and now I'm going to sweep your membranes. And I'm like, what is that? Like I'd never heard that before. I was like, what is that? He's like, oh, so I'm just separating, your water sac from the side of your uterus, and we should have a baby by the weekend. I was like, holy crap, like what?
When people say sweet membrane, and I feel it, like I'm still like flashbacks from the second kid or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah. So I didn't really know what to expect. He didn't tell me any side effects, risk, anything. He just said he was doing it. He did it. And then he was like, we'll have a baby by the weekend. So that was on a Thursday, I think it was. Yeah, that was on a Thursday. I was 39 weeks and 2 days. Went home. Nothing really happened at first. That was done at like 11 o'clock in the morning. Then by 5 p.m., I started feeling like really crampy and just not good. I
Mhm.
was like, oh, what is this? Um, and I think honestly, that's when I had my first contraction. I just didn't realize that's what it was. First time doing this. I sat up till about 11 p.m. and I was like, okay, I should probably go to sleep. My husband worked third shift at the time, so he had left for work and he was already there. 3:30 a.m. I wake up to a loud pop. I was like, oh my God, what was that? I was like,
That
that was,
iconic noise that now we know what it is.
yeah. I was like, oh my God, like that was weird. So I got up to go to the bathroom and then my water just gushed. I was like, oh, so we're having a baby now. So I texted my husband. I let him know. I was like, yeah, my water broke. Like it was a lot. He's like, okay, well, do I need to come home? I was like, yeah, you can go ahead and come home. So he gets home. I swear it was like a 20-minute drive and he got home in 10 minutes.
Nice.
So we're just like hanging out. I start like cleaning the house and he's like, don't you think we need to go in? I was like, I don't know. I just don't feel like going in yet.
Mhm.
Uh, but I did call the hospital and I let them know. I was like, yeah, my water broke, so you'll probably be seeing me soon. So we stayed home for about 2 hours before we decided to go in. Um, and then
You have any contractions at that time?
I did. I was having contractions immediately with my water breaking.
Yeah,
So,
that usually does it, doesn't it? So,
but here comes
the kicker.
the
Yeah.
whirlwind. So we get there, we get checked in. They're like, yeah, that's your water. And they were like, oh, you're still only 1 centimeter and 90% of face, which is exactly what I was the day before when I got
Ew.
there. I was like, oh my God,
You're
really?
like, can you give me better news than that, please?
No, I was like, at this point, I was expecting to be like further along because my water broke. Um, and my contractions were already like every 3 minutes
Whew.
too. So yeah. So they're like, yeah, you're not doing anything. What was everything when you got checked yesterday? And I was like, exactly the same.
Hmm.
They're like, okay, well, we're gonna give it a couple hours and then we're gonna check you again. And I was like, okay, cool.
Hmm.
So another couple hours goes by. My OB comes in, different OB,
Hmm.
from the same office. This was the lady I actually wanted to deliver my kids. Uh, so she tells me, since your water broke, we're on a time clock. And I'm like, okay, I know that from reading and everything. And she suggests that we do not Cervidil, Cytotec. And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay. Again, not telling me risk, side effects, nothing. She just says, we're doing it. I'm going to insert it here in a few minutes and we're going to go from there. I'm like, okay. So she inserts it a little after like 9 o'clock. And then at that point, things really picked up for me. I got lucky. I only needed that one dose, and then I had a baby at 117.
Oh,
So,
good. I'm glad your
yes.
story worked.
Yes. So it went really fast after that first dose. I remember around lunchtime, 12 o'clock, my mom and my husband's mom left the hospital to go get lunch, and I took a nap. I asked them for a dose of pain meds in my IV,
Hmm.
just to get me to calm down a little bit and try to rest. So I remember, laying down, and they checked me before I lay down. I was already at a 5, fully open, face, and all that good stuff. So I was like, okay, we're making progress. Um, but they did limit my moving.
Mm.
I wasn't allowed to move much because cord prolapse, the stuff that they throw out. Um, so
I've
the
never
only,
heard that one before, actually.
oh, really? Oh, I've heard it so many times now. But yeah, she told me, there's risk of cord prolapse, blah, blah, blah. We don't really like for people to move after their water breaks. So yeah. So the only movement I got to do was on a birth ball, literally right beside my bed. But that got me up to a 5. So, it did something. And then I think about 12:30, I woke up again and I was like, I feel like I'm going to poop. Like I
Mhm.
literally feel like I'm going to poop myself.
That's a good feeling when you're in birth.
Now it is. Yes, I know that it is now. So they're like, yeah, you're 8 centimeters. I was like, awesome. Like, we're there, went by really quickly. And then I think it was about 12:45 when I started pushing. 15 minutes, I was complete. So not bad.
No.
But now, looking back, I wish I would have known, risk and benefits, all the things to, one, doing the cervical sweep, and then two, the cytotech. Because knowing what I know now about cytotech, I would have never allowed that to be put in my body. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. So yeah, because that could have went really bad. But somehow I got lucky.
We've seen it where women, their membranes get swept, water breaks, dry birth, they're saying dry, and then they have the medicine, and then they don't go into labor, and then C-section. And so when that's completely opposite of what mom's birth plan is, mentally that can, carry a toll in postpartum healing mentally too.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that it did work out for you, but like I do, that it doesn't always work out like that.
Yeah, I was very adamant, no induction, no pain medicine whatsoever. I absolutely didn't want any, like, nothing, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't realize, until after the fact that membrane sweep is a form of induction. Mm-hmm. So, if I would have known, I definitely would have said no to it. My body was getting ready. It just, it probably needed a couple more days and I would have been in labor by myself.
I believe the importance of having a doula is we're able to educate on those things and let them know what their options are. We're not pushing either way, but you need to know risk and benefits of everything. If they come in the room, you need to know what's going on, not
exactly
routine,
And I think that's the biggest thing that bothered me, is not being told all the sides to it. I did have an episiotomy with my son as well. So healing was not fun. I don't think I was back to normal in myself and no pain down there until my son was like 7-8 months old. And he wasn't even a big baby either. He was 6 pounds, 5 ounces. So the only reason that I had the episiotomy is because he had a nuchal hand. So his hand was on his cheek. So he was coming out a little weird.
That's precious, but also
yeah, it hurts. So because of that, the episiotomy, I have like a 2nd-degree tear. I don't even remember how many stitches I had. Technically, I guess it's not considered a tear since they cut me, but that's what they told me and put on my paperwork. So yeah, postpartum with him was really hard, really hard. That is one of those times where I wish I would have put money aside or asked family to help and be able to pay for a postpartum doula. I had really bad postpartum depression and anxiety with him as well. So that played a big part in it. I was on medication for about a month and I was like, nope, don't like this. Don't like how it makes me feel, which I know now is because I am bipolar. Being on only an antidepressant is not good for me. So I know that now, but I didn't know that then. And then, I don't know, breastfeeding was kind of rocky with him. That's kind of why I got into lactation. I met with the lactation consultant at WIC, and she just changed my life, I was like, great. Wow, like, I want to do what you do because that is so awesome. So, yeah. And then the next year, actually, they added the program at GNTC. So I signed up for the program. I was like, yep, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
My son was 11 months old when I started it. So then, let's see. My son was 15 months old and we got pregnant again. So I did my lactation program when I was pregnant with my daughter.
That's so cool.
Well, okay. So it kind of felt where I did like all my stuff leading up to it, like, getting the vaccinations and stuff they want you to get and all that stuff. And then I had her 2 days after class started. So, and I hate, like, I don't like getting vaccinations while pregnant. So that was something that I had to kind of compromise on, because if I didn't get what they were wanting me to get, I wouldn't have been able to do my program. So I didn't want to have to wait a whole nother year. So I kind of got over it and just got them anyway. But that's a whole topic for a whole nother day.
Whole nother episode.
Yeah, I don't hate vaccinations per se, but I personally don't feel comfortable with them in pregnancy for myself. So, but I did have to, let go of that a little bit. So with her, everything was completely different, other than still birthing in a hospital. I did hire a doula with her. I really, really wanted a home birth, but again, money was not there. So I couldn't do it. I had a moment when I was in labor. I can't talk labor with her where I really did want to stay home and I was about to, but something told me I needed to go in. So that's another big thing I preach to my clients is intuition. If your intuition is telling you something's wrong, listen to it.
Yes.
So something told me I needed to be there, even though I really didn't want to be there again. So I went in. But her pregnancy was pretty tough on me. I was sick a lot, as well as like some other things that are kind of gross. So I won't talk about. But you know, just normal things in pregnancy that can be really hard. So I went to 39 and 5 with her, went into labor on my own.
Yay.
Time, like they were trying to push me to go ahead and schedule an induction as early as 36 weeks. And I'm like, no. They're like, oh, you know, it's going to be so easy if you just schedule it since you have one kid already. I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like we have a plan in place, you know, not a problem. So that was fun. From 36 to 39 and 5, it was 39 and 4, I think it's the last day I went to the doctor. You know, them just, please just schedule it. I'm like, absolutely not.
I said no. No means no.
Exactly. So her labor was really quick too. I mean, not super quick, but it was quick. I went into labor, let's see, 3:15 in the morning. For some reason, my body likes to go into labor at 3 o'clock in the morning. So
bored, I guess. You ain't got nothing else to do, right?
Exactly. Not trying to sleep or anything. But yeah, so 3:15, I woke up, contractions. I was like, okay, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it is, you never know. And then about an hour into that, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm having a baby today. The day before at my appointment, I was already 3 centimeters and 80% effaced. So I knew it was going to be soon, regardless of when it was going to be. So we didn't do a membrane sweep or anything like that. I wanted one, but then me and my provider talked about it, and she was like, "You're going to go into labor like any day now. I just know it." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll trust you." And I did this morning because I saw her 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So 12 hours I was in labor. So I got in my tub around, I think it was about 4:30, and just kind of labored in my tub. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is so peaceful. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to have this baby right here, just me. Like, I'm not even going to wake my husband up, nothing. And then I call my mom. We're talking on the phone. And she's like, you better get out of that bathtub before you have your baby in there. I'm like, it's fine. Like, that's not going to happen, just trying to play it cool. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to get out. Maybe I need to try to eat something. I got out immediately, had my bloody show. And I was like, okay, things are happening. Like, they're happening. Cervical change is coming. Like, this is awesome.
Do this.
So I called my mother-in-law to come pick up my son. I woke my husband up. I was like, okay, like if we're going to go in, we're probably going to have to go in soon because it was starting to get, I think they were like every 2.5 minutes at that point. And at this point it was about 6:30. And I was like, I really do want to stay home, but something's telling me to go in. So we're just going to go in. I knew nothing about unassisted birth. Didn't have any of the tools for unassisted birth. But in that moment, I was ready to do it.
That's awesome.
Which I was like, okay, no, we're going to go in. So I called my doula. She met us there. We got to the hospital about 7, I think it was. Get checked in, and they're like, okay, we need to check you to see where you're at. And I was like, okay, go ahead. They're like, okay, you're 7, almost an 8. And I was like, awesome. So that means I'm not even going to be here that long. This is great.
We're going to check out in 2 hours. We're ready.
Well, it was, she was born at 9:56. So
nice.
Not very long at all. I mean, we had just got into my room at like 8 o'clock, I think it was, maybe a little after 8. They kept me in triage for like an hour for some reason. Um,
You're
and
like, I'll have the baby in triage. Let's go. I don't care.
I mean, I was prepared.
Yeah.
And it was crazy with her because I don't know, like it never actually got painful.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't have, Pitocin, I didn't have side effect, nothing. And it was everything that I was manifesting her whole pregnancy. I'm like, I want to fast labor. I want it to be pain free. It's going to be pain free. It's going to be
Yeah.
fast. And it was. It was crazy. And that high that I had after she was born lasted, I'm serious, like months. It was insane. Um, and she came out also with the nuchal hand. No episiotomy with her though. I had a different provider deliver her. Uh, he's a pretty great one in the office. I like him a lot, and so far any of my clients have seen him. He's done really good with them too. So my only complaint about like that whole experience with her was one having to have an IV. Like it was really annoying. I hated it because I could barely hold her after
Yeah.
she was at. And instead of us doing skin to skin to get her body temperature up, they took her to the warmer. So that really upset me. But that was like my only complaint. But it turns out she had something called cord torsion. I don't know if you know what that is or not, but it's basically where there's hardly any Wharton's jelly on the cord at all, and it's like tightly twisted. Like it's not knots. It's just like, I don't know. It's weird. You'll have to look it up. I'll remind you to look it up later. But it's very rare. And that was causing her heart rate to be a little bit low and her not to move a lot during labor. So I think that's why intuition told me to, go ahead and go in, because that could have ended really badly. So yeah. But other than that, like, that immediate postpartum, everything was great with her. Breastfeeding was going great at first, but then because it had been so long since I nursed a newborn, I kind of forgot you have to help them, the first couple of weeks. And she started losing a little bit of weight. My son never lost nor gained that first 2 weeks. He literally kept the same weight for almost 3 weeks actually. But she was losing more weight. So I did go see another lactation consultant. The one at WIC couldn't get me in, that I saw with my son. So I went to see the one that's at one of the local hospitals, not the hospital I gave birth at, because the one I gave birth at doesn't have one. So yeah. But once I realized, I got to help her out because she's a newborn, she doesn't know what she's doing, that weight started coming back on her really good. And then I did my program, I took 2 weeks off to kind of heal up and everything, and then jump back into it. Breastfeeding from there on was great. Obviously I was in a program for lactation, so they let me pump and all that good stuff whenever I needed to. My son nursed through my pregnancy with her, and then I weaned him on his 3rd birthday, and nursed them at the same time. And then my daughter weaned when she was 2 years and 4 months old, I think. She didn't want to, nurse as long as my son did, but I let both of them kind of choose when they were going to. And then when I noticed we were down to once every 2 weeks, I was like, okay, you're being cut off on this. And we're not doing it anymore. So, but yeah, those were my experiences with birth. And I did make the decision to get my tubes removed prematurely. I completely and totally regret that now. But postpartum with her, even though it wasn't as bad as with my son, I wasn't really thinking rationally. Obviously, I jumped right back into school, trying to do all these things. Decided to start my own doula practice and made some decisions that should have been thought out. And getting my tubes removed was one of those. So, yeah.
I think that's a manic thing, and I have those also, and then I regret them a few years down the road. And I understand that point of it too.
I think that's something that is not talked about enough. I think some people, yes, when they get it set in their heart that they're done having kids, that, they're actually being rational about it. But I think people like me who are bipolar or whatever, you're not thinking rationally all the time sometimes.
Uh-huh.
And I think our providers need to take that into consideration before
Definitely.
signing paperwork and doing surgeries on people.
Something life changing that can't be reversed, you know.
Because my OB, she doesn't do like the tying or anything like that anymore. She strictly only removes them completely. So yeah, that can't be reversed. And now, like I said, I regret it. I regretted it like as soon as my daughter was about, I think, a year old. I was like, oh my God, what did we do? We can't have any more kids unless we pay for it.
Bless
So,
your heart.
but, that's something we could talk about another day too.
I love
There's,
that. It's to be continued when I'm talking to Brittney, which is great. Whenever I
yeah,
was about to get on the call, I thought, I have so much to talk to her about, and I just don't, I got to pinpoint something, But I knew that whatever you said, that somebody's going to take a nugget out of it and go home with that. And,
yeah,
they might have needed what you said. And if anything, the education side, that you were more educated on your second birth and you were able to
yeah.
be in
Oh,
more
I'm
control.
crazy about researching with her. Like I thought I did with my son, but it was
Mhm.
nothing compared to that second pregnancy.
And you can
And
tell
honestly, I don't know.
postpartum wise too, like your
Yeah,
mental health postpartum, you were more
yeah,
confident going into the second one also.
yep. I don't
That's
know.
so
Like,
funny. You said when she was a newborn, you're like, I forgot they don't. I do the same every single time I have one. I'm like, wake up. Why are you not eating?
right? Because you get so used to nursing a toddler, and you're like, oh, they know what they're doing, and then
Right.
it's like, oh, God, I have to start all over. That's something like I make sure to remind clients of too, like especially if it's their second, third plus baby, like you've got to start completely over. This is
Yeah.
completely baby. They don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Um, you've been nursing a toddler the last year or two, sometimes three, and
Hmm.
now the baby is completely fresh. So you got to remember, you got to stay on them about waking up. Sometimes you have to manually like get some milk out and
Yep.
get them interested. So yeah,
That's
I was bad about it with my daughter. I really was. I thought everything was fine, and I was like, oh my God, like she looks really skinny now.
yeah.
She was smaller than my son. She was 6 pounds 1 ounce. And her smallest, she got down to, I think it was 5 pounds 9 ounces. The smallest my son was 5 pounds 14 ounces. Yeah, I was like, holy crap! Like this whole time, I thought she's been eating and she's doing like the bare minimum.
Hmm.
So yeah, always be mindful of that. Second and third time parents, you're gonna have to get on their butts about eating.
Yeah. Well, thanks for meeting me today. I know our time is almost up, and I appreciate all of your advice. And I know that someone's going to need to hear what you say. And I'm interested to share some more stories another day with you. But
Yes,
thank you so much for being here with me today.
of course. Thank you for having me.
I hope you have a wonderful night.
You too.
Bye, girl.
Bye.